Jamie Stalcup, executive editor of TV Reel, and I'm joined by the lovely Mike Gunton, director of Factual at BBC Studios' Natural History Unit and executive producer of Prehistoric Planet Ice Age. Hi, Mike. It's so great to meet you.
Guys, hi, how are you?
I'm good and very excited to be talking to you about this. You are a master in natural history documentaries. You obviously have tons of experience working on the most popular natural history programs.
Thank you.
Prehistoric Planet is unique because it's obviously about the past and
Yes.
animals that are now extinct.
Yeah.
You obviously can't observe them directly. So tell me about the research that goes into portraying this time and these creatures as scientifically accurate as possible.
Well, I think it's an interesting specifically about Ice Age, because one of the reasons why I was excited about moving the Prehistoric Planet universe forward to the Ice Age was because there is so much evidence. Because these animals are not, some of these animals were alive only, well, some were only alive 300 or 400 years ago, but the Ice Age, as we've sort of referred to it, sort of ended 11,000 years ago, roughly. So a lot of these creatures were around in human history, in human memory. So our ancestors saw these creatures. So some of the evidence actually is literally drawings and paintings of some of these creatures. But the other thing is because they're much more recent and because of some of the ways they're fossilized or they're preserved, I should strictly say, there's so many more specimens. There's so much more physical data. And some of that actually includes literally I keep wanting to say mummified, but they're sort of deep frozen bodies, fur, all the structure, all the soft tissues so you can actually see what they actually look like. Whereas that's much, much harder with dinosaurs. And then you've also got La Brea and places like that where you do get these mummified creatures. So there's lots of physical evidence. The other thing is that because they're close to the animals that live today. In fact, all the animals on Earth today we're all Ice Age survivors. All these animals were alive in the Ice Age. So there's lots of evidence you can take from extant animals that are on planet Earth today, which are closely related in terms of what they look like, how they move, but also their behavior. And a lot of the stories we're telling are in what we call social mammals, so animals that live in social groups. And that suddenly makes it much more interesting because you get these interplays, you get strategies, you get all sorts of interesting dynamics in that circumstance. And so you can look at how closely related animals operate in the similar situations, because Mother Nature she's quite clever. She writes, there's only a limited number of things. The rules are quite strict. In situation X, you'd usually do Y.
Yeah.
And so you put animal X, which is like animal Z, in that situation, you can be pretty sure it's going to do something of that ilk, which gives you much more confidence that your stories and your scenarios are legitimate. Trickier with dinosaurs. We have to we have to be more deductive with dinosaurs, but here we can do it really accurately.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of that accuracy, with Prehistoric Planet, especially this season, it does such a remarkable job at bringing these animals to life. The textures of their fur, the scales, the way they move, it all feels so, so real. Versus you go back 10, even 15 years ago, and the programs aren't as detailed, or you're aware that you're watching an animation.
Yep.
What kinds of technology were used with Prehistoric Planet to make it feel like you're watching real footage of live animals?
Well, I mean I wouldn't. The only reason I would do this is for that. If it doesn't look like it actually looks like a wildlife film, wouldn't be interested. And we wouldn't have been able to do this 5 years ago. Even you said 10, even 5 years ago, I think this would have been a stretch. And how we've done it is a combination of things. Some of it is drawing on the kind of Prehistoric Planet universe technique, which is to use all the photographic grammar we use in a Planet Earth type show. So we don't use any VFX type cameras. The cameras all they are VFX cameras, but they all operate like a real camera, operated by a real person. So every shot if it's in the show, it's only a shot that we could have got if we had been in the field with that animal with that camera, with that type of lens. So we don't have shots up the nose of a T-Rex or in the jaws of a saber-toothed, or flying up round the head of prehistoric of a mammoth, because actually you probably could do that today with these micro drones, but basically we're saying that's an impossible shot. We do shots that people think, my God, how do they get that shot? But they have to be possible impossible shots. So that's the first rule. The second rule is in VFX, you can tell any story you like as well. Anything. Again, we say no. We row back from the hyper dramatic and say what really happens in nature. Let's use stories this is where I help, because of the things I've seen in my life as a wildlife filmmaker. Those are the sorts of things that are legitimate, and I've seen those, so that you can believe that. You combine that with the technical advances. So, this is a challenge. Mammals are difficult, much more hard, because we all know what mammals do. We've got cats, dogs, we are animals. We've got very sensitive to what looks right and what looks wrong. They're covered in fur. Fur is really difficult. So one is very hard. Fur is very, very hard. You've got millions of individual structures on this reconstructed animal, all of which move independently. That's computing power, insane. That's very, very hard. Then the next thing is these animals live in the Ice Age. So they're running around in snow or they're having ice on them. That is very, 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 very hard. So most VFX people would say, put their head in their hands and say, impossible. Framestore, they didn't. They never said no. Every time we came up with an even crazier demand, they said, we'll do it. We'll try to find a way of doing it. And I think that has driven the ambition to a place where I don't think anybody is matching this in terms of creature work in any feature film. Or maybe I'm going to regret saying this, but I think nobody is matching this anyway.
I can say as a viewer, I don't think I've seen anything quite like this. And then the lovely David Attenborough narrated the first 2 seasons, but for this Ice Age edition, you brought on Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
Why was he the right person to take over for this season? And what does his books lend to the series?
Yeah, I think we felt it because we were jumping forward such a big distance in time. It was a good chance. It was a good opportunity to take a slightly different narrative approach, both narration approach stylistically and also the writing of it. Tom, of course, is very much a voice of, he's narrated a number of Apple shows. So he's got a bit of a kind of, authenticity or whatever the word is, legitimacy as being an Apple wildlife narrator. And I just thought there's something about his voice in this world just seemed to me to fit with these animals more. I don't know what it was. I worked with David. I've worked with him for 35 years. Fantastic. But we just thought this was a good opportunity to do a slightly different approach. And I think it's worked. I think it's taken a slightly different perspective on it, and it's good. He was a joy to work with as well, absolutely. And David is as well. They're both brilliant people to work with, but this was just a nice opportunity.
Well, like I said, the show just does such a phenomenal job bringing these animals to life like never before. I got chills watching.
Okay. We've just were showing an episode to some of your colleagues in the journalistic world, and we had to, because we're short for time, we showed the opening sequence, and we had to stop it at a point, and everybody went, "No, what happened?" Now, if it felt like VFX, you wouldn't do that. Everybody felt those animals were alive, and that was something really tricky was going to happen, and they wanted to know. And I think that made me think, yeah, we've got it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for telling me about the series. I can't wait to see where it might go in the future. And thank you for all your work in the natural history field.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you for talking to me today. It's lovely.